He told me I was lucky he stayed. He said the world wouldn't know what to do with a woman who could not lift her left hand to her own face. He said, "You need me," and then he proved it in ways that turned my house into a quiet kind of prison. I am going to tell you something a woman like me was taught to bury with the good silver. My son hurt me, in my own kitchen, in my own bed, in the hours when the river outside held its breath and the ceiling fan clicked a slow, metronome mercy above us. He hurt me after my stroke, after the left side of my body forgot itself and I learned to swallow without choking and to speak without losing the ends of sentences. He held the keys, and he held me. Do you think love can survive that kind of weather? Do you think a mother can forgive without opening the door again? My name is Ella Laner Bennett, but folks around Savannah have always called me Ella because it fits in the mouth easier on a hot day. I am 72 now, and I have learned how to say things plain without making them smaller. If you stay with me until the end, I will tell you what forgiveness looked like in my house, not a welcome, but a blessing you give yourself so you can sleep without listening for the wrong footsteps. And if you have a story that shakes when it stands up, leave it here, somebody might hold out a hand you can take. If you want a place where old women tell the truth softly, you can pull your chair closer and be part of this, no fuss, just company. When I was a girl, Savannah smelled like river water and starch, like the lace my mother starched stiff enough to stand on its own. Spanish moss made the live oaks look like they were wearing their Sunday hair, and even the shade felt like a hymn. We didn't have much money, but we had obligations we kept like good dishes, polished, ready. My mother taught me the kind of quiet that passes for strength. A lady endures, she'd say, and press a hem with a thumb that could flatten a problem just by holding it long enough. My father worked at the port. He came home with the rope's dust on his clothes and the gulls' complaints still in his ears. He could tell the weather by how the water stood itself up, and he whistled like the sound could sweep a room for sadness and leave it outside. I married once, to a man named Willis who liked to bring home peaches and call them sunshine you can eat. We had one child, our boy, and when I first held him, I thought the river had sent me something it wanted me to keep. He was beautiful the way a storm is beautiful when you don't know yet how close it plans to come. I named him for a cousin who sang in church like he owned the roof, and I raised him the way I'd been raised. Grace first, please and thank you, iron your shirt even if the world acts like it doesn't notice. He was a quick child, too quick sometimes. He wanted to see the inside of everything, and if you told him no, he'd find another hinge. When he was little, he kissed my knuckles. When he was a man, he knocked on my table like every surface owed him a sound. Somewhere between those two boys is where I lost him. The stroke found me a summer afternoon when the air lay down on the porch and refused to move. I was shelling butter beans, the old radio talking low, when my mouth slid to one side and the bowl tipped and the sound those beans made on the floor was the beginning of a long night that took months to end. I remember the ambulance like an insult and a blessing at once, too bright, too fast, exactly what I needed. The hospital smelled like lemon and fear. Nurses asked me to lift what would not lift. Doctors spoke a language that touched my name only at the beginning and the end. I came back to my house with a cane I could not trust yet and a mouth that had to think before it spoke, and the left side of me still living in yesterday. I learned exercises with rubber bands and patience with corners. I learned to pull a glass toward the edge of the counter, not push. I learned to say please to my own body and mean it. That's when my son came to stay. He said he would help. He said he would be my legs and my hands, and for a while, he was. He read the pill bottles out loud. He set an extra chair at the sink so I could sit and peel apples without the kitchen floor tilting like a boat. He learned the names of the nurses and made them smile. He brought me fresh sheets and tucked them around me the way good men tuck in their children. He moved through the rooms like a promise I had earned. I slept. I said thank you. I believed. Then came the first insult that didn't sound like a joke. You're lucky I'm here, he said, the way a man might say grace before a meal, practiced, the beginning of a ritual. And because I was grateful and because the word endure had lived in my mouth for so long, I answered with softness. I said, I know, baby. I said, thank you. You learn a thing when you are weak. Gratitude can be a shield or a leash. I did not know which one I was holding. He started keeping the front door locked with the key in his pocket, said it was for my safety. He moved the phone into the kitchen drawer and kept it there so you don't fall trying to reach it. He said the neighbors didn't need to see me in this state, that he would tell them I was resting. He told the home health aide I was improving but tired, so she should come every other week instead of every week. He was so kind about his control that even the air said thank you. And then, on a day I don't need to tell you the date for you to feel the weather of it, he crossed a line I had not named out loud because I didn't believe such a line could exist between a mother and the child she made. I will not draw you a map of what he did. I will tell you it was an injury that never bruised where a camera could take proof. I will tell you that the ceiling fan clicked like a witness that didn't want to be. I will tell you that something inside me, which had been sleeping since the ambulance, woke up and stood. Afterwards, he set the kettle on like it was any other evening, and I lay very still and tried to find the part of me that still had a name. He called me Mama, soft as a towel on a line, and I understood for the first time that a word can be a cradle or a weapon, depending on the hand that holds it. Keep quiet, he said, and the lace at the window might as well have been bars. No one will believe you, he said, and my mouth, the one that had been practicing every syllable all summer, forgot its training and shut. He took my world and arranged it like furniture he wanted to sit on. He apologized in the morning, the kind of apology that leaves its shoes on. He made eggs the way I used to make them for him. He smiled so sweet the floor forgave the night. He promised it would never happen again. And then it did, not right away. Control is patient when it has time, but again, and again, until the days learn to hold their breath. You might be wondering why I didn't call the police that first night. Why I didn't open the window and scream, or roll myself down the porch steps and let the grass finish the sentence he started. People who have not been trapped think freedom is a door. Sometimes it is a lid, heavy, with both our hands on it. I was ashamed. I was afraid. I was trying to keep what was left of my life from breaking into too many pieces to pick up. And there was the body, mine, that needed tending, pills on time, water within reach, the careful ways you have to move so you do not punish yourself with setbacks you cannot afford. Survival is a job, full-time, with paperwork and alarms. I kept my head down and did it. But please don't make me small in your mind. Inside the quiet, I began to count. Counting is a way to build a railing when the stairs were taken from you. I counted the times he left the house. I counted the steps from my chair to the drawer where he kept the phone. I counted how long the kettle takes to think about singing. I counted the good minutes in a day and put them aside like coins in a jar, because one day, I thought, I am going to need exact change. I made friends with the morning light, because it came every day whether or not he did. I learned the song of the trash truck and the grammar of the mailman's shoes and the way the river says noon if you listen. It is strange, the things that keep a person alive. A blue plate with one chip that sits on the shelf like a wink from your former self. The smell of clean sheets. A neighbor's laugh through a thin wall. A nurse who hums without knowing you can hear. When the home health aide came back, the one he'd pushed away with his smiles, she looked at me long, like she was reading a page that didn't match the chapter title. She adjusted my pillows and asked a question without asking it. I blinked slow. She pressed my hand, once, like a doorbell you only ring when you mean to enter. I will see you next week, Ms. Ella, she said, with a weight under the words that felt like a promise. He did not like her. He told me she was meddling. He told me nobody needs to know our business. He told me, say you're fine, and I did, because that day surviving meant saying I was fine. The strength to start over sometimes looks like weakness until it doesn't. Nights were long, the marsh outside held its breath and the moon made a thin coin of itself. I learned how to breathe in a square, in, hold, out, hold. I learned to pray without giving God chores he could refuse. I asked for a steady hand and a soft voice and the patience not to hate my own bones. I thought about the boy he used to be, the way he would eat popsicles on the porch steps and let the red drip onto his toes, the way he used to sleep with his hand beside his cheek as if it were saving him a seat for later. Memory is a traitor and a translator at once. It can turn danger into a lullaby if you let it. I stopped letting it. If you are listening and some part of your story has started to tap its foot in recognition, I want you to tell me in the comments what held you when the house was teaching you to be small. Your words might be the plank someone else needs to cross the hard water. And if you need a place where we keep a light on for truth that doesn't shout, you can stay with me. You can subscribe if it helps you find your way back to this porch when the world gets loud. No pressure. Just a seat and a glass of water waiting. One afternoon, while he was gone longer than usual, the phone in the kitchen drawer felt like a living thing. I had been practicing. I had scooted the chair to the edge of the rug and learned the difference between the rug's drag and the wood's mercy. I had memorized the sound the drawer makes when it is almost open but not quite. I had timed the kettle. I had practiced the words that matter more than any apology ever will, my address, my name, the fact that I am not safe. My left hand would not rise, but the right could, and did, inch by inch, the way sunrise inches up a blind. I got the drawer open. I got the phone in my lap. I dialed and hung up and dialed again and let it ring all the way to the human voice that asked me things I could answer without making my throat a battlefield. He came home before they did. He saw the open drawer. He saw the phone in my lap. He did not raise his hand, he did not need to. Fear is efficient when it's had practice. He reached, slow, the way you might reach for a bird you're trying not to scare, and I held the phone like it was a book I had waited my whole life to read. We stared at each other in a room that suddenly had too much air. And then there was a knock not like his, respectful, with authority in its knuckles. "Miss Bennett?" A voice through the door, a woman's voice that had learned how to be kind without being soft. He stepped back. I closed my eyes and opened my mouth and said, "Yes, ma'am," and the door became what it was always supposed to be. The officer came in with the home health aide behind her, my aide, my angel in comfortable sneakers. They looked around the room, the way women look when they already understand. The aide walked straight to me and put her hand on my shoulder and said, "I've got you, like a shield you can wear." The officer asked questions with the care of someone rearranging glass. I answered what I could. I didn't say the words I won't say to you. I said enough for the law to understand that a body can be trapped in a house it owns. That a mother can be held hostage by the boy she taught to cross streets and say thank you. That the left side of a woman is not the part that decides what right is. They took a report. They gave me a card. The aide wrote her cell number on the back like a secret only I needed to keep. The officer asked if I wanted an emergency order that would tell the law to build a circle around me. I looked at my son. He looked like he had swallowed a light bulb and didn't know how to live with the heat of it. He said, "Mama." I said, "Yes," and the word was a raft. Paper saved my life, which seems small if you have never held the right set of papers in the right set of hands. The emergency order had my name on it like a spine, and the judge's signature looked like a bridge that had been inspected twice. The officer explained what it meant. He could not come within a certain distance, could not call, could not let his voice in under the door in any form. My home health aide helped me pack a small bag, the kind of bag you pack when you don't know yet if you're leaving or arriving. She moved through my house with a reverence that made me forgive the walls for what they had witnessed. She put my church dress in even though I wasn't sure I'd be going to church soon. She said, "Hope gets a hanger too." He did not fight. He left with his shoulders pulled up like he was trying to hide behind his own bones. He did not slam the door. He did not apologize. He just walked out, and the house exhaled, and I realized I had been holding breath for so long that the oxygen made me dizzy. The aide stayed. We made tea in the blue kettle I'd bought before the stroke because it matched the plate with the chip, and for the first time in months, the sound of water boiling did not sound like a verdict. We slept with lights on. In the morning, We folded blankets like women do when they have done the hardest thing they will ever do and still know the day expects breakfast. The court made the temporary order permanent enough to give me a year of sleep I didn't have to ration. The paperwork stretched time into a road I could travel without checking every shadow for his face. The social worker had eyes that did not flinch. She introduced me to a counselor who spoke in the slow, respectful way a gardener speaks to new growth. The counselor said we would go as far as I wanted and stop when I did. She said, "You are not a case, you are Ella," and I believed her because she said my name like it had a roof over it. I told the truth in pieces I could lift without hurting something else. We did not talk about the worst nights. We talked about the sentence a lady endures, and how a sentence like that can be a coat in winter and a stone in summer. We talked about the day the home health aide looked at me until I remembered I had a face worth being looked at. We talked about the difference between forgiveness and permission, about how one sets you free and the other lets the door swing back open on its own. We talked about my left hand learning to take back small tasks, and how victory can be a button, not a banner. She asked me what I had done to survive. I counted, I said. I learned his patterns. I kept a seed of myself under the floorboards where the weather couldn't find it. She wrote the words down like they were worth keeping. Survival strategy, counting. Survival strategy, saving one small seed. It wasn't easy. People think once the bad thing is outside the house goes back to being a house. Grief stayed. Shame tried to climb in the windows. I woke to the sound of the old ceiling fan and had to remind my body that the click it made was just age, not danger. Voices on the phone, cousins, said things like, "He needs treatment, not punishment," as if me breathing without checking the locks were a form of revenge. I said, "I am choosing life," and let that be the end of the conversation, even when it wasn't. The church ladies brought casseroles with a silence inside them I could not eat. I started attending a different church, sitting in the back where I could see the door and the exit sign and the way the choir looked at one another like they were dancing on a small boat. New is not betrayal when old tried to bury you. Recovery has a texture. It feels like clean cotton and warm tile and metal rails that don't wobble. It sounds like the kettle asking a question and you answering in your own time. It smells like lemons you slice yourself. The home health aide, her name is Audrey, I am telling you now because you should know the names of angels, began to come more often, not for the tasks in her chart but for the ones a chart cannot hold. We would sit at the small table by the window and let the river wind comb the moss. She taught me to breathe in squares, and I taught her to make biscuits that don't apologize for being tender. She sat with me the first time I read the protective order out loud to myself, like learning a new psalm. The police called to say he had been told the terms. He did not contest. He found a room somewhere across town and a job that did not last. He called from a blocked number and I did not pick up. He wrote a letter. I opened it with Audrey sitting beside me. It said he was sorry. It said he was sick. It said he needed me. It said I had ruined his life. It said a mother doesn't call the law on her own child. It said he loved me. It said too much and not enough, the way men write when they want a door more than they want to be different. I folded the letter and put it with the papers that saved me, and then another day, when the air felt like glass I could set down without breaking, I tore it into strips and let the trash do the work I no longer had to. I started physical therapy again, not because anyone thought I would run a race, but because my body wanted the chance to prove itself present. I learned to stand without swaying. I learned to hold a cup with my left hand for 3 breaths before it remembered yesterday and asked for help. The therapist, a man with kind hands and the patience of a lighthouse, said, "You are teaching your body to trust you again," and I believed him. I bought linen pants because summer in Savannah does not accept excuses. I sat on my porch and watched the azaleas act like they invented pink. I listened to the old men in the park argue baseball with a seriousness that made me feel safe by accident. One morning, in the produce aisle, I saw him. I knew him by the way his shoulders held themselves, by the way his jaw worked at the air as if he were chewing through the day in advance. He saw me. We were two people who shared a history and a bloodline and a room neither of us wanted to stand in anymore. He said, "Mama," and the word tried to do what it used to do. It did not. I said, "Matthew." I said it without hate, which is a kind of victory they don't put on medals. He took a step. I did not back away, but I did not open. "I'm getting help," he said. "I'm in a program." He told me the name. I nodded. "I am glad," I said. "I hope you keep going." He reached, and I lifted my hand and stopped him with the air between us. "If we talk again," I said, "we do it with someone sitting with us, in daylight." He looked 12 and 40 at once. He nodded. He said, "I love you." I said, "I love you from here." He left, and the oranges waited for someone who wanted sweetness without hunger. We met once more, in a room that had seen better days and harder stories. A counselor sat with us, a woman with a braid that could have hauled a boat. He spoke of childhood like it would defend him. I let his words pass me like weather. I told the truth, the small daily truth, that I was alive, that I was not coming back to any version of the house where he held the keys, that forgiveness was a gift I gave myself to stop bleeding inside a wound nobody could bandage for me. He cried the way men cry when their idea of themselves meets a wall. I did not move to comfort him. That is not cruelty, it is the kind of mercy that refuses to lie. If you are still with me, if the porch feels like somewhere you'd sit again, leave something of yourself below. Not a secret you aren't ready to release, just a word like surviving or hoping or here. It helps to know how many of us there are. And if having stories like this arrive at your door feels like a kindness to yourself, you can subscribe. It keeps the light on. It keeps us from losing each other in the noise. The day the order expired, I renewed it. No ceremony. No drama. Just a woman in a clean dress, in front of a judge who had learned to say my name, asking the law to continue standing where it should have always stood, beside the mother who kept herself. I walked out into Savannah light that had no grudge against me, and I bought a blue kettle because the old one had started to sound like yesterday. This one sings low, like a river that has decided it will not drown you today. This one sings low, like a river that has made its peace with its own bends, and most mornings the whistle is the first honest sound I hear. I pour the water and wait for the tea bag to loosen into the day. Audrey told me, start with 3 things that can't be argued. The cup is warm. The window is open. The light is kind. These are facts that do not require anyone else's permission. I say them out loud, softly, like a new language I am learning late in life and loving for its patience. In the weeks that followed the renewal, I became the student who always sits near the door, not because I plan to leave, but because I like to know how. I learned the route my body trusts from the bedroom to the porch without the cane's protest. I learned that the left hand can carry a folded towel even when it still refuses a glass. I learned to nap with the confidence of a cat and to wake without asking the room to introduce itself. Grief and shame still visited, uninvited. I let them sit for a while and leave hungry. You don't have to feed everything that knocks. I started going to a group at a small church that smelled like coffee and lemon oil, where the chairs told the truth about being metal. We went around the circle and told only the parts that could be carried in one breath. My name is Ella. I am here. Sometimes that was all I had. Sometimes I added, I am practicing forgiveness that does not return the keys. The women nodded like a choir that knows the tune even when the soloist forgets a word. One woman wore a scarf every week and changed its knot like a weather report. One woman laughed without permission and reminded us that laughter is not a betrayal of what happened, it is a sign that what happened is not in charge anymore. On Wednesdays, a van took me to the library where I shelved returns and learned the quiet pleasure of putting things where they belong. Dewey Decimal is a kind of prayer if you've lived long enough. Children wandered through with questions about everything and nothing. A girl asked me how to spell boundary, and I sounded it out with a care that would have made my 3rd grade teacher proud. Boundary. When she wrote it, her tongue peeked out in concentration, and I thought how many lives might have been saved if we learned that word earlier. At home, I cooked small things in small pans so I could finish them. Lemon bars. Eggs whose yolks stood up like they had something to say. Biscuits that forgave every mistake I made and still rose. I burned the first batch and ate one anyway while it was too hot, the sugar shocking my tongue into a laugh. I set the blue kettle back slightly on the burner so it wouldn't rattle. I opened the windows and let the moss perform its small ballet of survival. Across the street, a neighbor began to bring in her trash can later each week, and I realized she was waiting to see me wave. We became friends the way old women do, through rituals that look like errands. I met a man named Ellis at the Saturday market, where tomatoes glow like souvenirs from July. He asked which melons smell like they remember their own vines. He had weather on his hands and birds in his voice. He did not ask for my story. He asked for my favorite bread in town and laughed when I told him the name as if it were a secret we were big enough to share. We walked slowly, the kind of slow that means you're not chasing or fleeing anything. He showed me the bench with the best breeze. I showed him how to pick peaches that will forgive you for eating them over the sink. When he learned I sit near the door in rooms, he didn't puzzle it out loud. He simply chose chairs that honored the habit. Kindness that does not study you is rare. I put it on a shelf where I could see it. One afternoon my granddaughter, Ruthie, came over with a drawing of a bird that had too many wings and not enough feet. We named it politely. She asked about her uncle the way children ask about thunderstorms, fascinated and wary. I told her he was trying to learn to be kind to himself and other people, that sometimes grown-ups need heart school. She accepted it because children accept truth when it is offered plainly. We made brownies and left flour like a snowfall around our shoes. She pressed her freckled nose to the oven door and said, "It's doing the thing," and I remembered why ovens and hearts have windows, so you can watch transformation without losing your patience. Sometimes the past came back without knocking. A scent, soap left too long in a dish, citrus holding on to a knife, would pull me into a room I did not want to revisit. I did not fight the pull. I stood in the doorway and breathed in a square, in, hold, out, hold. "Ella," I said, like calling a child in from the yard at dusk. "You can come back now." My body listened more often than it argued. I returned to Dr. Lang and sat in the chair with the stitch I had learned to trust. We talked about forgiveness as a one-way act. We talked about justice as the architecture that keeps a roof on the gift you've given yourself. She asked me to name the places in my house where I never felt safe, and we redecorated with language. The bed, mine. The kitchen, mine. The front door, mine. The porch, mine. Ownership returned the rooms to their proper size. "I am not erasing him," I said. "I am restoring me." She smiled as if she had been waiting for that sentence to arrive the way dawn waits for the edge of the blinds. Ellis walked me home sometimes from the market, two old people practicing the slow art of not hurrying, and he pointed out birds by how they said hello. A cardinal like a bit of punctuation in a green sentence. A wren with a small opinion. A hawk writing its own name in the air. When a storm rolled in, we stood under the awning and watched the street turn into a rumor, and he said, "I used to think survival was winning. Now I think it is staying." I understood him. Some days survival is a full-throated hymn. Some days it is one dry note, held. If you're listening and your life has a corner that feels unlit, tell me one small light you keep, comment a word if that's all you have. T. Window. Neighbor. Bench. Your small lights help other people see their path. And if you want to keep this porch warm for strangers who might become neighbors, you can subscribe. Not to collect numbers. To collect company. Then came the day that tested what we had been building. Audrey had just left. The house was doing its polite afternoon quiet. The kettle thought about singing. The doorbell rang, not like the officer's knock, not like a neighbor's friendly fingers, but a long press that said I am owed. I rolled to the door and did not open it. The chain stayed latched. "Miss Bennet," a voice called, a male voice. I didn't know. Delivery. I hadn't ordered anything. "Leave it," I said, and my voice surprised itself with its steadiness. "I'll get it later." The silence changed temperature. Then, soft, through the door, a word that tried to be a key. "Mama." I did not move toward the door. The air in the hallway had the weight of old nights trying out their lines. "You have an order," I said. "You know what it says." He said he needed to talk. He said he was different. He said he brought me peaches. He said he was sorry. He said he would stand on the porch until the sun forgot him. I looked at the blue kettle. I looked at the plate with the chip. I looked at the door chain that was not my courage but had learned to guard it. I dialed. I told the dispatcher my name and my address and that the order had arrived on 2 feet. I put the phone down and let the house stand. He knocked again, not angry, almost tender. "Please," he said. The patrol car arrived quiet, a kindness to the neighborhood. When the officer stepped onto the porch, I felt the floor restore its shape. I watched through the window blind's careful slats. Words passed out there that did not belong to me anymore. Papers were mentioned. Distance was measured. Choices were offered. He left with the officer, not in cuffs, but in consequence. I thanked the door out loud. Love is not always the thing that opens. Sometimes love is the thing that holds. After the porch, I slept like a woman after a harvest, the body honest about its work. The next morning, I buttered toast to all 4 edges and did not cry. The counselor called to check on me, and her voice sounded like a pew in an empty church, quiet, wooden, honest. "How do you want to close this chapter?" she asked. The word chapter felt wrong, too tidy. "I don't," I said. I want it to end in the middle of a sentence so I remember not to walk back in. She laughed softly. "Then we'll use a period you can trust," she said. The district attorney's office asked if I wanted to speak at a hearing about the violation. I chose a letter instead of a microphone. I wrote it at the small table by the window, where the river keeps time and the moss makes old jokes to the wind. I wrote that I forgive him. I wrote that forgiveness means I will not spend the rest of my life rehearsing anger I have already felt enough times to fill a barn. I wrote that forgiveness is not a pass. I wrote that love and access are different words. I wrote that the order is not a punishment but a fence around a garden that has finally started to breathe. I wrote that I am not asking the court to fix a family, I am asking it to protect a person. I signed my name the way my father taught me, steady, without flourish, as if the pen were a small boat and the river were calm. Ellis came by with oranges that tasted like the idea of summer, and we sat on the porch and did not talk about the porch. We talked about the wren with the opinion and whether the clouds were making a plan. He told me how he lost his wife and learned to carry the quiet without letting it bruise him. He said, it helps to set the table anyway, and I understood. We set 2 plates even on days we were not hungry. I went back to the group and told them about the doorbell and the chain and the phone. The scarf woman clapped once softly, the way you encourage a bird to take a crumb from your palm. Another woman asked, "Did you shake after?" and I said yes, and we all nodded because the body keeps its own minutes and you can't argue with a good clerk. We passed the tissue box and no one needed it, not because we were brave, but because tears were not the currency that day. A letter came from his counselor. He wanted another supervised conversation, for closure. The word tasted like aspirin. I said yes to protect my own story from whispering to itself at night. We met in a room whose paint had given up pretending it was new. The counselor sat between us like a levee. He told me about the program, about apologies written to other people. He said the words he thought would unlock me. I am a different man. I understand what I did. I am ready to be your son again. There was a time those sentences would have been a raft I climbed without asking where it was heading. That time is over. I believe you are trying, I said, and the counselor watched both of our mouths. I hope you keep trying. I am your mother. I love you from here. He cried like the word here was a cliff. I did not move. I will not live with you. I will not see you without daylight and a witness. I will not let the door confuse us. Forgiveness has rules. He put his head in his hands and said, You're choosing them over me. No, I said. I am choosing me over what you did. The counselor breathed. The clock on the wall did its simple job. The room held. When we left, I saw him look at the door like he thought it might do what I wouldn't. It didn't. The hearing came and went. The court extended the order again, this time with the seriousness that arrives when a story has learned to speak in complete sentences. I wore my church dress because hope deserves starch. On the way home, a summer storm started and the streets pulled their skirts up. The driver asked if I wanted to wait it out, but I asked him to take me through it. We did, and on the other side the air was the clean kind of wet. On my porch, the moss shook itself and laughed. That night, I slept with the window open to let the river tell me what it always tells me when I remember to listen: you can be strong without being hard. In the morning, I put on a dress with pockets, pockets are a declaration, and walked to the mailbox without the cane, holding nothing but my own balance. A cardinal landed on the line and made a period of itself. The kettle began to sing. The blue made the steam look like something worth painting. If you're still here, if this gentle, stubborn story has kept you, tell me one boundary you've learned to love. It can be a word, a door, a time of day you protect. Your answers help strangers grow a spine the world will try to borrow. And if you want to keep this small circle of quiet company going, you know how. Stay. Subscribe if it helps you remember the way back. People wait for closure like it's a parade that comes down the street on schedule. What I got was a calendar that stopped scaring me. The terror shrank from an ocean to a pond to a puddle I could step over if I lifted my hem. I still have days when the body calls roll and fear answers present. On those days I practice the little liturgy Audrey taught me: name 3 facts. The cup is warm. The window is open. The light is kind. I add a 4th when I need it: the door is locked because I chose it. I did not become a saint. I did not become a crusader. I became a woman who can make lemon bars and share them at the library without apologizing for the crumbs. I became a grandmother who answers hard questions with soft truth. I became a neighbor who waves at the trash can later and later because someone is waiting for the wave. I became the sort of person who buys flowers for herself and throws away the ones that apologize for being tired. I became a person whose name fits in her own mouth. Sundays, I still go to Forsyth Park. The fountain throws its veil over the afternoon like a blessing people don't have to earn. Old men argue baseball in the shade with the joy of soldiers who have forgotten the war. Children court pigeons who refuse to be impressed. Musicians try out courage on the paths and the trees lean in to listen. I sit on a bench and let my hands belong to me. The air slides over the moss and the light breaks itself gently on the leaves. I think about my mother and her word endure, and I give it back to her with thanks and also with an edit. Endure when you must, remake when you can. Do I miss my son? Yes. I miss the boy with the popsicle toes and the lashes that made strangers smile. I do not miss the man who brought a storm inside my house and called it weather. I pray for the first and tell the truth about the second. I have forgiven him. I have forgiven myself for believing that love without rules is love. I have forgiven the ceiling fan for clicking the way it did. I have forgiven the night for teaching me to count. I have not surrendered my keys. Love is not a receipt you present at the returns counter. It is a garden you tend with fences and gates and a sign that says, gently, by appointment only. Sometimes I imagine him far away, holding a cup with both hands, the way I do when the tea is too hot. I imagine him learning to be kind without witnesses. I imagine him not using the word mama like a lever. I imagine him not at all and find that this, too, is a form of mercy. Every life deserves a chance at repair, not every life deserves access to your living room. If this story set a hand on your back and helped you stand, leave a small trace of yourself below, a word like here, or beginning, or home. If you have older hands like mine and younger worries in your chest, tell us what you wish someone had told you sooner. Your comment might be the light on a stranger's porch. And if you want more quiet, relentless stories told by old women who decided to live, subscribe. Not for me. For you, and for whoever wanders in next week with a heart full of static and a need for a chair. At night, when the ceiling fan clicks, I smile at it. The sound is only age. The blue kettle whistles, and I do not rush. I let it sing to the exact end of its song and then I pour, and the steam lifts like a good idea. I hold the cup and say my facts. The cup is warm. The window is open. The light is kind. I add one more because I can. I am safe, and not because anyone let me be. Because I chose it, and I keep choosing.